Hello, and welcome back to English with Amira. My name is Amira, and I'm a certified English teacher that's qualified to teach business English as well as English to young learners. So, today I'm going to be talking to the ESL teachers and instructors out there who are not sure how to formulate their trial lessons or what to say. A lot of times, when you're supposed to give a trial lesson, the company that you're working for will provide you the topic or the materials for you to do the trial lesson yourself. Or on some teaching platforms, they will just tell you the language level of the person, but not really give you a guide on how to specifically structure your trial lesson. So I'm going to be showing you the trial lesson that I made personally according to what I teach, and we'll see whether or not that will help you. So if you don't know where to start in your trial lesson, keep watching. Before we get started, I'm going to tell you the things that will make your trial lesson really, really good before we even get into the material. The first thing that you need is a quality ring light or some sort of lighting. You're not going to always do lessons during the day, especially if you have students of different time zones. And trust me, there's a difference between this and this. And again, guys, I'm super sorry if my voice is scratchy or low. I just came from vacation and my throat hurts, my face hurts pretty much, but I really want to show you guys what it's like to do a trial lesson because so many people are getting into the ESL tutoring and English teaching, and so I want to make sure that you guys are prepared and do your best. So let's get to the lesson. So as you can see, I have my headphones on and they're comfortably situated on my head. You want to make sure that your mic is as close to your lips as can be. You don't want it here because that's weird. You don't want it here. You don't want it here either. So make sure that it's right here so that you can hear and the person that you're teaching can hear you properly. So now we're going to get into the trial lesson and we're going to go through all the slides, and I'm just going to just show you why I chose the color I chose, the wording and everything else that will help you in your trial lesson creating. Okay, great. So now it says here, welcome to your English trial lesson. I put the name here, teacher Amira, and I also put the pronunciation, so it's Amira. And I put a little fun GIF here or GIF, whatever it's called, because you want to have something inviting, something that captures people's attention. And I chose Mickey Mouse because, upon my research, I didn't find that Mickey Mouse was offensive to any other countries or anything. So I just wanted to have a neutral character that everybody recognized and something that was a fun way to introduce the lesson. So now we're going to go into the objectives. So the objectives, this is when you explain to your learner what you're going to be talking about. So in our objectives, we have, of course, the introduction, about our class, the lesson paths, lesson examples, and at the end, the person who is receiving the trial lesson is more than welcome to give me feedback. Now, this can change depending on what you're talking about. You can make more objectives, you can make less objectives, but also this helps me structure the PowerPoint correctly and also helps me remember what we're going to talk about. Because sometimes your trial lesson may be 50 minutes, sometimes they're 30 minutes, sometimes they're 25 minutes, but you need to make sure that you won't ramble and you won't go over time. So in my case, I'm trying to prepare this lesson for about 30 minutes to 50 minutes. And I know people are saying, whoa, 50 minutes, but we will see how we can easily make this from a 30-minute to a 50-minute trial lesson. But I will always say, start off with an intro and also welcome the person into your classroom. You say, welcome. I'm so excited for you to be here today. You can even talk about the weather. You can say, how's your day going? It's raining out here. Is it raining here to you? Or, is it raining near you? Is it snowing? What is the weather like? And by you asking your learner these questions, you also get to have a good judge of their language level. And feel free to even have the learner read the objectives to you. So you can say, hey, what I'm doing here is, hold on, I'm going to show you right here. you can say to the learner, um, hey, can you read this word? And they'll say, oh, that's introduction. Great. How about this? About your class. Okay, great. Next one, lesson plans. Great. Lesson examples. Fantastic. Student feedback. And if you know that your trial lesson is going to be a little bit longer, you can ask them, hey, do you know what the word introduction means? Do you know what lesson path means? What do you think it means when I say student feedback? And they can either tell you that they know or they don't know, and you can explain that to them. So, mind you, you have just spoken for 5 minutes out of the 25 minutes that you have, or the 30 minutes that you have, or the 50 minutes that you have. So, this way, you're still going by your lesson, but you're also building it slow. And the more that you spend time talking to your learner or your student, we call them learners a lot in the ESL world, but the more you get to talk to your student or your learner, the more they can relax, you can relax, and both of you are starting to build what they call a rapport, which is just a relationship, a professional relationship between one party and the other. So let's continue. So now we're on our second slide. And don't mind this picture here, but what I did, and if you want to get graphics like this and you don't want the white background, again, I suggest using something like Canva or Bazaar, and that way you can take the picture that you want and you can take out the background. Now, this is something that I actually personally made. If you have an iPhone, you probably know what this is. And it's fun to add pictures because then it kind of makes the lesson, like I said, more fun, more interactive. And a lot of times when people see this picture, they laugh at it. And they're like, is that you? And I'm like, yeah, what I think it is. So it's a great way to have a conversation. So, of course, before we begin, you always want to know if the person can see you and if they can hear you. So you can say, before we begin, can you see me? And again, me using my hands like this or me doing like this is not rude, but it's called TPR, total physical response. So that way you're introducing physical action into your conversations. And especially if you're teaching American English, as you know, Americans do like to use their hands, as you can see when we talk. So this is a great way for people to kind of understand the body language that they need to have when they speak English. And also, having TPR is a great way for you to tell the learner what you want them to do. So if I say, can you see me? Can you see me? Yes or no? And if they say yes, then that means that they can see you. Same thing. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? And if they say no, then okay, that means something's going on with the sound, or that means there's some technical difficulty maybe on your end or their end. No worries. But it's very important because you don't want to go through an entire trial lesson and they do not see you or hear you or see your screen. So you can also say, can you see my screen? Yes or no? Okay, so don't worry, you're not patronizing them, you're not being rude, you're just making sure that they are on the same page. So, I want to talk about why I used a gradient color green. So at first I wanted to use purple, I wanted to use yellow, I wanted to use red, but the reason why I didn't, and white, but the reason why I didn't want to use those colors is because I felt like they were not neutral. I felt like purple was more so on like the feminine side and maybe too, feminine. I felt like yellow might be too harsh, especially for the pictures that I'm using, and I felt like it was too intense. Red, I felt like was way too intense. I'm way too passionate and everything is too alarming. And that goes into kind of like color psychology, which we can get into in a different video. But when you do teach, you do have to use psychology and you do have to understand how color psychology works, especially when you're showing someone something visual and you want to get their attention. And you'll see this later on when we go into the next part of our slide. So the first slide we went over, just an introduction, welcoming them to the class, maybe asking how the weather is, having them read the objectives. And now you're showing them or you're asking them, before we begin, can you see me? Can you hear me? Great. Awesome. Let's move on to the next slide. So, who is your teacher? Now, this one is blank because what I'm going to do on the next slide is I'm going to have different things flash. And each picture that's going to show up is going to be different things that is a different things that they need to know about me and different things that I feel that they should know. Now, the question is, oh, who is your teacher? I know we haven't gotten to our lesson yet, but the most important thing, and I'm sure you would agree, is that you don't want to just speak to a total stranger. You want to know who they are. You don't want to just get into a classroom and feel that someone's just talking at you and you have no idea what they're doing, who they are. And studies have shown that even in, schools, that students respond better to teachers that they know a little bit of personal history about. You don't have to get too personal. You don't have to talk about how many kids you have. And if you want to, you want to. But as long as you're appropriate about it, then it's fine. So, who is your teacher? So, the first thing I put is certified ESL teacher. This is what I'm going to say. I'm a certified ESL teacher. This is my certificate here. And these are two examples of me teaching. Now, in this example, like I said here, I'm showing them my teaching certificate. Of course, I blocked out any personal information as well as the QR code that sometimes might come with our certificates. And I also showed them an example here of me teaching a student, a young learner, and then me teaching an adult learner. Now, these two look the same because both of these students here were at basic English levels and we had very, very simple lessons. Now, this was another teaching platform that I was on, but these materials were given to me. As you can see here, the trial lesson was given, and you have these examples, or you have a full lesson where you just kind of have to study the material and memorize it before your class. All right, so let's continue. Let's get rid of all of this here. Thank you. Okay, so like I said, I really, really like to show the students who I am and just let them know, hey, I am a certified ESL teacher, and here's the proof to show it. Now, a lot of times they may or may not care, but a lot of people do ask, oh, how long have you been teaching? How long, what type of people have you taught? Where are they from? So I can say, yeah, I've taught people from China. I've taught people from Russia. I've taught people from South Korea. So you just it gives you another chance to, again, not waste time, but have an open dialogue. And you can even ask them, like I said, if you know that your trial lesson is going to be a little bit longer, you can ask them, hey, do you have any questions about this page? And they may say yes. They may say no. They may say, oh, what does ESL mean? And you can say, oh, English as a second language. Because a lot of students will say that they're ESL students, but they don't really know what ESL stands for. So if you didn't know, ESL stands for English as a second language. All right, let's continue. Then I go into my lifestyle. Again, nothing too personal, and this one is a pretty loaded page, and I think once you see these images, you're going to know exactly where I'm going with this. So here's the first image, here's the second image, and here's the third image. Now, I can go back and say, well, I am from America, but I moved to Albania. I like to cook in my free time. And when I have extra free time, I like to play the violin. So you can explain it like that, or you can go back and say, this is something that occurred. What do you think is happening in this picture? And and someone will say, oh, um, someone from America is going to, and usually they can't guess the Albanian flag, but they'll say, oh, going to a different country. And then I'll say, yes, that's correct. I'm an American who moved to Albania, right? And then same thing with the second picture. What does this picture look like? And usually they will describe it to the T. They'll say, oh, you're cooking lemon with chicken and beans. And I'm like, I don't know a recipe like that, but very similarly, I do like to cook with a lot of recipes that include, yes, chicken, beans, and lemons sometimes, but never all together. Um, and then same thing, I can say, well, what instrument is this? And they sometimes they'll get it right. They'll say a violin. Sometimes they'll say a cello. I've had someone say guitar before, and I was like, tell me, why do you say guitar? Oh, because you see the strings and you know what else has strings? A violin. And a violin you play with a bow. With a guitar you play with your hands. So again, it's more conversations to have. And you're also teaching the student in your trial lesson, and you're showing them that you are patient with their questions and you don't get aggravated because they don't have the correct answer. So there's so many ways you can do this alone, but again, I do suggest that you do show the student a little bit about your life because they will be drawn to you more. So with trial lessons, I would say, if you can, especially if you're making them up yourself, there is nothing wrong with showing just a little bit about your personal life. As you can see, I didn't get too personal. I'm just showing you where I live. I didn't tell you my address. I'm telling you what I like to do, and I'm telling you an instrument that I play occasionally. And now I'm not telling you how many kids I have, my marital status, my height and weight, my blood type. That's not necessary. So let's move on to slide number 6. Now, we have let's get to know you. Because again, you want to develop rapport, and that works both ways. So you don't just want to say, oh, let's just talk about me, and you don't know anything about them. So the first question, I think everybody, if you don't already, it's nothing wrong with asking them, what is your name? Mm-hmm. And then they say, oh, I saw that your name was so and so. Is this how you pronounce it? Oh, nice. That's a beautiful name. Second, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Thailand. I'm from India. I'm from Peru. I'm from Mexico. What do you do for work or study? That's a cool one. I like asking people that because when you meet people from all over the world, they have some very interesting jobs. Last thing you can always ask them is, why do you want to improve your English? Now, I'm going to break down why I asked these questions the way that I did. Because again, you don't want to seem like you're interrogating someone, so I think 4 to 5 questions is enough. You don't want to make them feel like they have to doubt. You don't want to make them feel like they have to doubt their English speaking journey or that they're doing something wrong. So the first simple question is, what is your name? Oh, my name is Anna. Oh, that's a beautiful name. And you can even elaborate on each of these questions. You can say, how do you spell that? A-N-A or A-N-N-A. Even if you already know what their name is, and even if it already says it, that won't matter. You can ask them anyway. You can also ask them, do you have a nickname? Oh, Teacher Amira, what is a nickname? There you go. You can answer another question. A nickname is something that someone calls you that is not your name. For example, my name is Teacher Amira or Miss Amira. My nickname might be Mimi. Never been called that, but if that was my name, If that was my nickname, I would say, oh, I have a nickname too. My name is Mimi or Amy. A lot of times people will call me Amy, but this is the time for them to shine. So you don't have to include your nickname, even if you do, but it's always good to just elaborate on your questions. Number two, if they say, I am from India. What part of India? I'm from whatever part of India. Oh, great. Is that north of India or south of India? And you know how I'm using the hands of north and south. Is it north of India or south of India? Is that north of China or south of China? Oh, wow. Can you describe what it's like to live there? Is it very busy? Is it quiet? What type of animals do you have in India? Like, you can ask them so many questions. Name one famous person that lives in India that you know. You can ask anything that you want. What is a popular food from India or China or Ukraine or, you know, Peru, Mexico, anywhere? So you have so many questions to ask just from this one question. Question number three, what do you do for work or study? So they can say, oh, I study engineering, I study music, or I work for an IT company. I work for a food company. I work in sales. Oh, that's great. You can say, now I wouldn't ask them, why do you work for a food company? Why do you work for whatever, or why you're studying? Because why, again, can introduce doubt. And you don't want to make a person feel bad about what they're doing in their life because you don't know. That is a little bit personal and they may not be the happiest. Most of the time, people do study English to transition to another job or to get a promotion to a different area. So you want to be careful when you're talking about that. You can say, oh, what does your typical day work look like? Or do you live near your job? Or do you live near your school? Um, you can say, you can ask them questions if they say, I work in a food company. Is this, what type of food company? Is it, you can elaborate on that. You can say, oh, I study engineering. What type of engineering? Wow, that's amazing. How long have you been studying? Blah, blah, blah. How long have you been working? Blah, blah, blah. So again, you can ask so many questions by just this one question, especially if you know you have time. Now, if you're looking at your clock and it says you only have 15 minutes left or you have 30 minutes left, depending on how many slides you have, you want to be careful. Lastly, it says, why do you want to improve your English? Now, I said, why do you want to improve your English instead of saying, why do you want to study English? Or why is English this language you want to study? Because again, that's a little bit of a confusing question. It's a loaded question, and they want to improve their English because a lot of times you have people who have been studying English for 4 or 5 years and they may know basic English, but there's something that they want to improve on. They may want to improve on their grammar. They may want to improve on having real life conversations. They may want to improve their pronunciation. So it's all about improving. You're not starting from zero with them. You're starting at about, look at each learner like you're starting at number 5 because they did the steps that they needed to sign up for the course. So that means they understand some basic form of English, but you want to see why specifically they want to improve. And that will tell you, the teacher, how to move your lessons and how to create structured lessons for them. Which gets me into our next part. Let's see. Okay. Slide number 7. This is where we go into our class. So what I like to do is I'm not going to say rules for our class. I will say about our class. about our class. And it's not saying, welcome to my class. My classroom rules are, because again, it creates a militant style of class, and you can't say, oh, I create a relaxing environment, but you're stressing them out with the words that you're saying. And again, visual, visual, visual. It's very important to have visuals, just so that it can be more fun. So, the materials that we use. So, in my classroom specifically, I feel comfortable using the following materials. We'll use, hold on, I'm going to change the color for you guys. So, we're going to use PowerPoint slides. We're going to use news websites, but you see how specifically I created examples like weather, celebrities, news about celebrities, or news about movies, like, oh, this movie is the top 100, or do you know that there's going to be a storm occurring in this area, or celebrities that put out a new song, or celebrity birthdays. That's the type of news websites we're going to use, and I'm specific for a certain reason, and it's going to bring me to the bottom square that you're already seeing, but we're going to get into later. Also, if needed and when relevant, in my class we will use YouTube videos. So you see here, we have PowerPoint slide right here, or Google Slides, whichever one you want to use. News websites, so I have the news icon, and then also the YouTube symbol right there. Now, I say about our class, we do not. Now, I wanted this language to be a little bit more stern because I wanted to not, I know I just said we don't want to create a militant environment, and that means when everything is strict. But with this, I wanted this to be the only stern and memorable, I would say, rule or standard of our class. We do not discuss politics. So we cross that out. Or religion. I do not focus on spelling. So in my classroom, in my teaching style per se, is I'm not going to enforce spelling unless I see the person typing it out, unless we have an activity that requires them typing out something for me or them messaging me back and forth, or we're doing like a mock, situation, like a mock email to each other or something like that. I'm not going to correct spelling because honestly, even native English speakers make spelling mistakes. And also, I'm not going to focus on sentence structure. I'm not going to create a whole lesson on, oh, subject plus this plus this. I'm not going to do that because a lot of times you're going to have people who are learning English to have more verbal conversations. And you're just speaking, you're not writing sentences a lot of times. And with AI and grammar, Chat GBT and Grammarly and other sentence enhancers and sentence correctors, there's really no need to really focus on that anymore. So next, in my class, there are 3 different paths that students can take. Path number 1, which is accent clarity. So pronounce words like a native English speaker, improve word stress, syllables, and linking. Now, I would just explain this more and say, pretty much everything that's here, but I would say, word stress, meaning how, what words to really emphasize in a sentence, syllables, and linking words to each other. And I would say, do you have any questions about what I mean by accent clarity? They'll say no, or they'll say yes, or they'll say, what does the word clarity mean? What does accent mean? That's when you can explain it. Path number 2, real life conversations. Talk about subjects you are likely to encounter and use proper vocabulary and phrasing for the situation. So in my class, our lessons would, if they choose path number 2, our lessons would be based on real conversations that they may have, whether that's asking for directions, talking about something that happened, such as the weather, such as celebrities, such as anything to do with that, movies. You might be on in a situation. Now, this one, depending on who is my student, I may or may not do this, but if, let's say, if you're going on a date for the first time and you want to have a conversation, how to, have an English conversation around that. How to talk about, buying stuff at a grocery store versus the shopping mall. Things that are really, really relevant to, again, real life conversations. Path number 3, job interview practice. Learn how to introduce yourself professionally, how to ask questions during job interviews, and appropriate work conversations. Now, this one is very, very important. Now, again, your lessons might be different. You might focus on sentence structure. You might focus on vocabulary. You might focus on one topic, and that's what all your lessons are going to be about. That's where you and your presentation is different from mine. It doesn't mean mine is better. It doesn't mean yours is better. It's just our different teaching interests. You have a lot of people who are going to provide lessons on medical terminology in English. You may have ones that structure around um, culinary arts in English. You may have ones that talk about, I don't know, how to pass your English speaking test or preparing you for university or college in an English speaking country. Everybody is different. So make sure that your topics or your paths, so to say, are conducive to what you want to teach. These are just the ones that I teach. These are the options that students have. So this is where I would explain it to them. Again, I have the visuals here. So it says, which one should I choose? And I say, the other, bubble says, don't worry, we'll get to see all 3 examples today. So them just reading this alone is not enough. They're going to need to be in it. And again, you're getting them connected to the lessons before you even start your paid lessons. So that way, by the end of this trial lesson, they're going to already take away 3 options to have with you, or 4 options, whatever your teaching style looks like. But I suggest that you provide them with an example of what your lessons will be like. So that way they will know and they won't be surprised when they have a lesson with you. So again, it says which one should I choose? Don't worry, we will get to see all 3 examples today. Okay? So the first one, as we remember, is accent clarity. So it says, remember, accent clarity is not about changing your accent. It is about being clearly understood by others. Now, when you show examples, please remember, do not give them an example from your actual lesson, because a lot of times they'll go into the lesson. If they choose to sign on with you and they see the same example, they'll feel cheated, because then it's like, well, what am I actually learning if I just got something for free in the first trial lesson, or if I can get this in a trial lesson? So make sure that this example has nothing to do with your actual lesson that you're planning to teach them. This lesson here has nothing to, these are not the examples that I'm going to use, but this is just an intro to kind of like, let them dip their toe in the water a little bit. So I have it here, a little tip, and this is not my greatest tip. So if they choose to take this and think that they got away with something, they're missing a lot more if they choose not to sign up. But it says, remember, accent clarity is not about changing your accent. It is about being clearly understood by others. And that's something that a lot of people who want to learn English aspire to be. They want to be understood. They don't want to deal with the frustration of having to repeat themselves or feel embarrassed because they're not um, they're not able to communicate well, even in the same language, or they're not able to be understood. And that could be very frustrating, and that could be very discouraging for those who want to learn English. So we're starting off with our example sentence here. I think she lives near the river. And I want the person to focus on these three words: the words think, the word lives, and the word river. So I'll have the person say, can you say, hold on, let me get my annotating material here, my little squiggly thing here. Let's do this. Uh-oh. Okay. So I'll say, can you say this word here? And they say, think. I'll say, okay, sounds good. Think. And this is again where you use TPR. And I will put my finger to the bottom of my lip here and say, think, think. You have to really pronounce it for them. And then they may, not get it right at first, but that's okay. But we're just going to go to the next word. Lives, lives. A lot of times I have people say Liz. No, Liz is a name. Lives, lives. You have to make sure that they pronounce every letter correctly. Lives, lives. Think, lives. hmm And then the third one, river, river. I've had people say river and or they'll say river or river. And no, it's river, 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 river. And make sure you're pointing to your mouth and make sure that you're close enough to the screen to the point where they see exactly the way your lips are moving. And I'll say, okay, great. That's great. Let's try this again, but slowly. And here you see I have it say, now repeat again. I think she lives near the river. And you can even clap with them and say, I think, you go, I think she lives near the river. I know that last one was two syllables, but you kind of mix it up and you'll find your pattern. And so you just do that, and you can do that a couple of times, but don't spend too much on it because, again, it is a trial lesson and you have more to get to. So this is path number 1. Path number 2, we have real life conversation. Okay? So here's the scenario. You were supposed to meet your friend for coffee, but you are running late. You have to explain this to your friend politely and clearly. And so I would ask the student, I would say, can you read this and tell me which one sounds more natural? The person will say, hey, I'm running late. I'm running a bit late. Is that okay? Or I'm sorry, but something came up. Would it be possible to meet later? Due to circumstances outside my control, I will be arriving late. So you can also ask them, which one sounds more natural? Which one did you feel more comfortable saying? Now, I've had some people tell me just from different parts of the world, you may get different answers, and they'll say, "Oh, I'll say this one here, this second one." And I say, "Can you tell me why?" And they say, "Oh, because you're saying I'm sorry, so you're being polite." Which is true. You are being polite by saying I'm sorry. And I've had people also tell me this one, especially because it says I will be arriving late. But I do let them know that although you can use all of those, the most natural one to use is this one because you're meeting your friend for coffee. You're not speaking to a coworker or you're not in a professional setting, so there's no need to be so formal. So it says, hey, I'm running a bit late. Is that okay? And I would let them know. This is an example of what to say to your friend. But if you want to say this to your boss, or if you want to say this in a professional setting, you can use this one. Hold on, let me circle this for you. I would tell them, I don't think you should use the middle one in a professional setting because you're just saying something came up. It sounds very cold, or it sounds like you're not telling the truth. In a casual setting, when you're talking to your friend and you're just meeting for coffee, you can use the first one. And they're usually like, oh, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay. Now, for our third path, we have job interview practice. In this part, path number 3, I talk about job interview practice. And for this activity, we're talking about what it's like to introduce yourself to someone in a professional setting. And so when it comes down to introductions, people form impressions within seconds of meeting someone, which is very true. They also help an employer see how professional you are. So, introductions, I'm already giving them something without giving them everything by telling them, hey, this is how much your introduction means to someone. This is the value of your introduction. So, you have to make sure that it is on point. So, here's the scenario you are introducing yourself to your employer for the first time. What do you say? So, if you have a student, I would say, hey, how did you introduce yourself to your boss when you first met them? And they would tell me. Or if they're in school, I would say, how did you introduce yourself to your teacher or your professor? They would tell me, and I'll say, great, that's wonderful, awesome, okay. And I would say, did you state your name? They would say, yes. Did you thank them for the opportunity? Some say yes, a lot of them say no. Did you share your age? Some say yes. I've had people tell me yes. I say, did you talk about your family? Many of them actually said no. So the goal is, and what I want them to get from this lesson is that talking about your age and your family is not relevant to work introductions. And I would tell them, hey, make sure that when you are applying for a job, you thank them for the opportunity. You say, hello, my name is, we'll use the example from the beginning, Anna. And we'll say, hi, good morning, or good afternoon, good evening. Hello, my name is Anna. Thank you so much for the opportunity. There you go. And I also have these notes here that says, talk about your education and work history if your employer asks about it, not at the initial greeting. So you wouldn't say, hi, my name is Anna. I graduated from Columbia University and I used to work as a janitor at Cornell. Like, they didn't ask that. They just asked you how you were. Now, if they ask you, hey, tell me about your work history, it's like there's different. It's a conversation, not a monologue. That's something that me and the learner will get into in detailed lessons about job interview practice. You also want to make a learner feel like they have autonomy. Like, again, this is not a militant classroom. So I will always say it's your lesson, your path. And I literally put the finger emoji, the pointing emoji, so that they know I'm talking about them. Because, and I tell them, hey, let me get my little annotating thing here. Okay. I could say, hey, you can choose this option here. You can change the focus at any time. For example, if lessons 1 through 4, you wanted to work on your accent, but then decide for lesson 5 and 6, you just want to focus on real life conversations and then go back to accent clarity. Again, I'm not going to be militant about it. I just want them to let me know ahead of time. And that's what I would tell them. And you just say, hey, I'm willing to move lessons around and give you the lessons that you need if you just let me know ahead of time. Also, you can combine topics. So if someone says, hey, I want to learn about accent clarity and real life conversations. So one lesson, Monday's lesson can be about accent clarity, and Wednesday's lesson can be about real life conversations. And then if they have, you know, next week we would combine accent clarity and real life conversation. You can do that. You can switch them off, or I tell them, hey, every time we talk about real life conversations, I'll make sure to add an activity where we're working on your accent when you have those conversations. And I tell them the goal right here in the middle. I want their lessons to be relevant to them. I don't want them to just take a lesson that they don't need and that they're never going to use, which brings me to the second one. I want it to be enjoyable, because when you enjoy the lesson that you're learning, you're able to retain the information. Lastly, again, I want it to be useful long term. I don't want you to just learn 10 to 20 lessons that you won't remember in 6 months because they weren't what you wanted. So you always got to bring it back to them, and you always have to let them know, hey, this is about you. This is about you. And then that's what will make people want to engage in your lesson, because they know that you're tailoring it to them without them feeling like they're just another student on your list. You really want to make them feel, and this is true, you really want to make them feel like they are pretty much the only people in the world when when they have lessons with you, because you understand them to a different level. Sometimes learning English for them is, like I said, it's about moving up in a job. It's about moving companies. It may be about moving to a certain part of their life. So a lot of times learning a new language, it's emotional investment, it's financial investment, and so they want to know that you really, really understand them. It's not just a check mark to say, oh, I taught a kid from Bangladesh. I taught a kid from Mexico. I taught a person from Peru. It's not like that. You have to get really personal with them, and that's where you get the results that you want. All right, so student feedback. Again, we're following everything on the objectives. So now we're to our student feedback section. So I'll ask the student, what activity did you enjoy today? Sometimes you'll have students that say all of them. And then that's when you have to kind of say, well, what do you mean all of them? Like, which part did you remember the most? Sometimes they'll say, I didn't like those activities at all. And then you say, okay, hold on to that thought, but I do appreciate that. No matter what answer they give you, again, you're making them feel like they have a say so. So you're not just going to just throw stuff at them and they have no autonomy. You have to let them know that it's a relaxed classroom and they can say whatever they need to that's appropriate, of course. Don't let them be disrespectful, but they can say whatever they need to make sure that they get the lessons that they want. And also, it will help you become a better teacher because, listen, you have instructors that have been teaching for 10 years. You've had teachers that have been teaching for 20 years, 5 years, 1 year, 6 months. And and I mean each ESL instructor or teacher can improve, but you won't know where to improve if you're afraid of getting feedback. Number two, what part felt most useful for your goals? This is where this is where in my own lessons, in my own examples, in my own personal situation, I will know what that student, what that student's path will be. If they say, I'm really trying to apply for different jobs in the US or Canada or the United Kingdom, and I don't know what to say. I don't know how to have an interview. So it was really helpful when we did the job interview. Boom. That's path number three. Or if they say, oh, I have my job, but I don't really know what to say to coworkers when we go out for coffee or when we talk, Hmm, that goes beyond job interview. That goes more so of the real life conversations. Or if a person says, you know what, I speak really good English, but no one seems to understand me, then that's path number one, accent clarity. And so they're subconsciously committing to one of the paths that I just presented for them. Question number three, was there anything confusing or challenging for you? If they say, oh, well, I didn't really understand the questions you were asking me, or I didn't really know what the directions were, that tells you that, maybe you need to analyze their language level or rearrange your questions to make them to be able to be for them to be understood by by ESL students. Again, feedback will help you become like the greatest ESL teacher. So do not be afraid. Don't get discouraged because you spent 2 days on a PowerPoint or a video or a poster or a lecture and students didn't understand. It's okay. That doesn't mean that the next student won't understand. It just means that for this student in particular, you might just have to kind of alternate the way that you teach things, or maybe they're more of a visual learner. Maybe they're more of an auditory learner. And that's where, as you get to know them, and you can even elaborate on this question and say, was it confusing because of the way that the question looked? Was it easier when I read it to you? And they will say, oh, it was easier when you put pictures or when you used, your little cards, or if it's a kid, when you used puppets. You have to know what their learning style is. Question number four. Do you have any suggestions for future lessons? You can say, oh, the person can say, hey, well, can we use uh, real life situations? Of course we can. Um, can you use more pictures? Or they can say, oh, I can't really see, even if someone told me, and this is what actually taught me to be careful with certain colors that I use, and certain symbols and stuff. Even if somebody says, oh, you use blue, but I can't really see the color blue. Okay, well, next time I know that when I create those lessons, I'll create a copy and make sure that I create the copies in colors that are easier for you to see. What colors can you see? Oh, I can see orange easier, or I can see the color yellow easier, or I can see the color white easier. Some people say it's too much color. That's fine. But if they're going to be your student, you have to make sure that you're providing lessons to them that they can actually see and they don't get turned off by. So, of course, after the student feedback, you have what we call the outro. So it says you finished your trial lesson. Yay! And as you can see, I have visuals here. Okay, just a little something fun for them to see because it's an accomplishment that they made it through. They got to join the class, they got to see what our class was about, and I always let them know, I appreciate you for coming in and just joining, and please feel free to contact me via email, or if you're on a platform where you can directly message the student, message me through the whatever platform and let me know. I always leave them with this. I say, let me know what path you chose or if you want to combine them. And I'm more than happy to explain them to you again. So that way you're not saying, okay, bye. No, you're saying, let me know. So you're kind of creating like a little expectation for them, and either way, they're going to give you a response. If they say, hey, I really want a teacher that focuses on grammar or sentence structure, then you just, wish them luck and hopefully they find a teacher that will do that for them. Or they say, hey, I really like the real life conversations. Can we start off with that and see how we feel? Perfect. Either way, you're going to get a response because you don't want to do a trial lesson and then hear nothing back. So, Yeah, this is the end of the trial lesson example. I hope that these, explanations and visuals help you in forming your own trial lesson. And remember, it's okay to be nervous. You're going to be nervous with every new student that you meet, but remember, it's an exciting moment to meet someone new, immerse yourself in someone else's culture, and also share with them the wonderful, wonderful world of English speaking. So, thank you so much for joining and come back because I'm going to show you other videos on how to teach at certain language levels. Okay? My name is Amira and it was so nice to have you come here. Go ahead and click that like and subscribe and let me know in the comments if you feel that there were certain things that could be done differently in the trial lesson, what I should have added, or what your experience was like for your trial lessons. Bye!